These have been quite easily the weirdest playoffs I have ever watched or covered as an NBA fan, and I say that fully with the bubble in mind. Now, there are a few reasons for this. A lot of weird things have happened in this postseason, but the most obviously weird thing is that the freaking 8th seed in the East is 2 games away from a finals appearance. An Eastern Conference, mind you, that had easily the 2 biggest championship favorites in it, those teams being, at least teams that appear to be, teams that Miami has or will beat. Obviously, technically, they haven't eliminated Boston yet, but I think even if you're a Celtics fan, you can admit things don't look very good right now. So, with that said, let's talk about what is, to me, the craziest playoff run I've ever witnessed. Real quick before I get into this video, if you end up enjoying it, drop a like. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. And subscribe for multiple videos a week over here about the NBA playoffs and when the postseason comes around, that as well. Also, real quick, just got to do a quick plug. Check out my podcast that I host with Alex Hoops and Rudy St. Clair. We go live at 4:30 We go live at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Thursday to talk about whatever happened in the last week of the NBA. It's a very good time. The people who have been checking it out recently have all left positive reviews, so I'd appreciate it if you gave it a watch. Now, just to be clear, what Miami is doing in this year's playoffs is not necessarily unprecedented because an 8th seed has made a finals before, but I do think if you take a look at the body of work between those two teams, what Miami is doing is considerably more impressive. Back in the 1999 season, the NBA had a lockout season, which meant only 50 games were played. The 8th-seeded New York Knicks would make a finals run led by an old Patrick Ewing, Latrell Sprewell, and one of the most underrated players of his era, Allen Houston, as well as Larry Johnson. This team had a 54% win percentage, which gave them 27 wins out of the 50. They beat, ironically, the Miami Heat in round 1 in a series where Jamal Mashburn and Tim Hardaway had pathetically bad shooting series. They beat a Hawks team in round 2 where, again, they did not show up at all. They literally shot 31% as a team for the whole series. In the conference finals, everyone showed up for the Indiana Pacers except for their star player Reggie Miller, who played like shit, resulting in the New York Knicks winning the series in 6 games and advancing to the NBA Finals to get smacked by the San Antonio Spurs, who would end up beating them 4-1. Now, to be fair, obviously New York's defense contributed significantly to a lot of those bad performances, but I also feel if the team you face in the second round shoots 31%, at a certain point that's just on them and not your defense. So I'm not trying to take anything away from this run, but given the context of the lockout and given the context of their opponents not being the most impressive in the world, I think what Miami is doing by contrast is just significantly more impressive. First things first, let's talk about how close Miami came to not even being here. Atlanta beat them in the first game of the play-in by 11 points, so they went to face Chicago for the second play-in game, where Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan absolutely choked the game despite having the lead going into the fourth quarter. Now, this isn't anything new, but the fact that they were neck and neck with the Chicago Bulls for a large chunk of the game seems like a team that has no business going to the NBA Finals. I can say that given that I know the Bulls are not very good competition. So I guess they kind of dropped the ball there. So if your team got eliminated by the Miami Heat, you know, blame them. But everybody and their mother was saying that that game was pretty much just a fight to see who would get smacked by the Milwaukee Bucks in round 1. Everyone and their mother had Milwaukee winning that series quite handedly. And I do want to say, for the 5 people who've commented this, I realize it's a small sample, but it's annoying to me. I don't owe an apology to the Miami Heat, nor does any other content creator or analyst, for not having foreseen an 8th seed beating the Milwaukee Milwaukee Bucks. That's silly, and it's ridiculous that I've seen it at all, but just moving on. But of course, they did beat Milwaukee in 5 games. Now, yes, Giannis missed like 2.5 of those games, but Miami beat them with Giannis at least at 80% in back-to-back games. Then they faced New York, which was not hard, but now they are up 2-0 on the Boston Celtics, heading back to Miami for Game 3. Now, this is going to be recorded before Game 3, so I don't necessarily know what happened. Maybe Boston wins, and it seems like maybe they'll turn the series around. But again, giving up both of your home games, it's just not a good look and very, very, very hard to come back from. So, me personally, not necessarily a hot take, but my guess is Miami's going to close out this series. And if they do, it would make them the worst team win percentage-wise to make the NBA Finals in the modern era. Some teams in the finals in the 50s through 70s made it with a worse and even losing record, but in the modern era, no problem. So unfortunately for the Miami Heat, they are no St. Louis Hawks, Minneapolis Lakers, or Fort Wayne Pistons, but you know, you can only aspire so high. But in the last 40 years, aka past the Plummer era, the Heat definitely have the worst regular season win percentage of any team to make it to the finals. All of this is, of course, spearheaded by Jimmy Butler, who himself is having an all-time great playoff run. He's averaging 31 points, 6.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, over 2 steals, and leading the playoffs in steals. And he is doing this with a 61% true shooting percentage, all while playing lockdown D on the other end. And I do gotta say, as a Chicago Bulls fan who watched Jimmy Butler go from not even in the Bulls rotation to a defensive-minded role player, now to a star player, it's truly perplexing to watch this because I don't know if I've seen anyone elevate their offensive skill set to a more significant degree throughout their career. If you told me when I was 14 watching 2014 Jimmy Butler, and you told me he was going to average 31 points per game on his way to a finals run, there's not a chance in hell I would have believed you. And I would have been right not to believe you, even though it was just some dumbass 14-year-old. He essentially has gone from Matisse Thybulle to Michael Jordan, and it's wild to see. But as much credit as Jimmy is rightfully getting, I also want to make it clear that this is not entirely a one-man carry job. Bam Adebayo, to me, is having the best playoff run of his career. Versus Boston in his first 2 games in particular, he has been extremely aggressive scoring-wise, something many have been begging him to do for a while now. Screw this like wannabe shooting guard shit where he just takes a bunch of fadeaway jumpers all the time. That's really annoying, and he has had his moments doing that throughout these playoffs, no doubt. But in this series in particular, and just at large, he's been a lot better about asserting himself physically, and it's resulted in him getting easier offense and getting to the free throw line more. Versus Boston, he is averaging 21 points, 12.5 rebounds, 7 assists, and he's doing that on 59% true shooting. It's also worth mentioning that they are getting significant contributions from their role players, guys who really were not helping them all that much in the regular season. The reason why no one believed Miami would do jack shit in this postseason is because depth-wise, they were just completely lacking in the regular season. The guys who are now playing amazing for them were playing bad in the regular season. But if you take a look, combining Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, and Duncan Robinson, they are collectively taking 22 three-pointers a night while shooting 38% on them. That is immensely valuable and helpful for winning. Caleb Martin in particular has been perhaps the best role player of this entire postseason, and he deserves all the flowers in the world. He's averaging 12 points and 5 rebounds as well as a steal per night while shooting 40% from 3 on 4.5 attempts. He has a 69% true shooting percentage. Nice. And he is playing great defense on top of that. Hell, he has been excellent. Even we're getting contributions from Kyle Lowry. I thought that guy was practically dead, but here he is, the reanimated corpse who's been terrible in one of the worst contracts in the league for the past few years, getting you 9 points and 6 assists per game on respectable efficiency. Sure, still overpaid for what he's bringing to the table, but he's actually bringing something to the table, which is fairly new. It's kind of crazy how bad a lot of these players were in the regular season by contrast to what they're doing right now. Not saying all of these guys were playing terrible, but they were not being the truly excellent role players and squad of role players that they have been in this postseason right now. It's truly perplexing. I cannot believe what's happening here, but at this point, it's evidently clear that this is a team that is significantly better than their regular season record ever indicated. And man, I just got to give them their flowers and their appreciation. I know a lot of Miami Heat fans have been asking me where the video on them is. I wanted to see them go a little bit further before I dedicated a whole thing to them. But yeah, the fact that it looks like they're going to the finals now, it's just crazy, man. There's no other way to put it. It is crazy by contrast to what was going into it. But now, man, yeah. Another topic of conversation is like, where does this put Jimmy Butler all time? I'll probably make that video after more stuff has happened. But as of right now, it's looking like he's moving up quite a few spots. But yeah, that is it. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.